Rabbi Laitman, thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit and talk to me. I've been enjoying the talks and stuff that I've seen on YouTube and what have you. And this is for the Armstrong Williams show. He's a talk show host, and we've heard so much about the medical side of this. Basically, the world is in isolation right now, and what we want to talk a little bit about is the spiritual side of what's happening right now. First of all, you're an expert in Kabbalah, Rabbi. Can you speak to our audience a little bit about what Kabbalah is? This is an audience who's maybe heard the term, but they're really not familiar at all with what it's all about. What is Kabbalah?
So what is the wisdom of Kabbalah? Well, it is a wisdom that explains to us about the whole of reality, meaning not just what we understand and see, but how all of nature works, still vegetative, animate, and human levels, all of the phenomena and interactions that exist not just in the matter, but those forces that operate the world as well, and also our inner part of the human. Where does it go after we die? What happens with the upper force that guides nature, how it drives and orchestrates the whole system, and we don't identify it. So practically anything you can ask about existence is the topic in question for the wisdom of Kabbalah.
So what would be the Jewish or the spiritual or the Kabbalistic explanation then of what's going on in the world right now? Is God trying to tell us something? Is nature trying to tell us something? Or what would be the Kabbalistic or the Jewish spiritual approach to this?
Well, first of all, the spiritual approach is actually a scientific approach. All in all, it is a science. It's a research of nature. And from researching nature, we understand better how it works. The wisdom of Kabbalah is not about something that, just falls on us from the skies or anything of that sort. It's about human development that brings to a discovery. There is a unique kind of development of the human being that needs to happen in creation. And then you discover that from all of creation, still vegetative, animate, and human, all of nature, that whole system exists as an integrated system, meaning that all the elements of the system are interdependent, interconnected. And so it turns out that if we are all drawn towards connection, integrated connection, and if we're drawn to that connection in a good, positive way, with mutual support towards each other, then what happens is that we begin to experience that general global system and better understand the laws that operate in it. And accordingly, we can advance to a better understanding of nature. That's how the wisdom of Kabbalah works. So, the whole topic of what the wisdom of Kabbalah engages in is very practical. It's about how people, human beings, can come closer to each other, even though the forces of nature keep driving us apart. If we consciously overcome that wanting to come closer to each other, then accordingly, we can begin to understand the laws of nature, the phenomena that take place in nature, and then we can better organize our life and achieve a higher, more meaningful level of human life, where we know what is happening to us, what has happened to us, and what will happen to us. This is beyond the corporeal life and death, and it opens up the full map and system of nature to us.
So, in terms of the Kabbalah and the text, or in the writings, what are we supposed to do now? You said there's a map. So where does that map begin and end, and what's the solution, or what's the where are we supposed to go? What are we supposed to do?
The map begins. This comes from almost 6,000 years ago. That's when the first those kind of scientists begin to discover it, and they wrote to us. The first book in the Wisdom of Kabbalah is a book called Raziel HaMalach, and it talks about the hidden force of nature. It's the unseen force of nature. Again, that book is called Raziel HaMalach, Angel Raziel. And later on, more Kabbalists wrote Kabbalistic texts, and then about 3,500 years ago, in ancient Babylon, ancient Mesopotamia, there was an eruption of the separating force among humanity, among human beings. The human ego erupted. It was like an explosion that brought about conflict and hatred, and people didn't want to be together anymore. That is what we know as the Tower, symbolized as the Tower of Babel, etc. And so, correspondingly, there was a leader who rose called Abraham, and he said, look, the fact that we are now hateful towards each other, it's a natural dynamic that happens, and it's a call from nature that we have to connect between us, so that we cover all that gap and that distance between us with love on our part. And if we start doing that, we'll understand the dynamic of nature, the forces of nature, how we can work with them and achieve the better future. Some of the Babylonians of that time listened to him and followed him, and later on they went with him outside of Babylon towards the land of Israel, and that group started calling itself Yashar El, Israel, which means straight to that higher force of nature. They also call themselves Yehudim, which comes from the word Yehud, unity. And so they began to advance as a group. And that method that united them was actually the wisdom of Kabbalah, the method of Kabbalah. So they tried doing that, and they managed to do it for about 1,500 years, pretty much 1,500 years before the Common Era, until Common Era began. Then they built what's called the first temple, the second temple. They lived in states of connection between them until the forces of nature brought them apart and shattered that connection. They couldn't remain connected, and there were many wars between them, hatred, and so they were thrown out of the land of Israel to all kinds of places in the world. Of course, I'm telling you all this story in a very, very brief and compressed manner right now. But then, too, they discovered that after 2,000 years, where they had to be isolated, in what's called exile, in separation between them, and this mutual hatred and separation between all of them, they will have to be connected once again. And that connection will then be that final proper connection between them.
So that's where we're at today.
We are following these texts and this whole method, the whole method of the wisdom of Kabbalah, to connect above the separation. This is what we're trying to realize, and also explain to the whole of humanity. And that it's not just the small group of Israel now that wants to connect and discover the forces of nature, but right now we are we also need to advance towards talking about it to the whole of humanity. And the whole of humanity joins us. All know me from, as it is said, they all know me from the greatest to the littlest. They all have to connect between them, and in this connection, the higher forces of nature will be revealed. And we are responsible for that, and we need to bring that method to humanity. And until we do, humanity,
eventually every person feels that the Jews have some secret that they're not disclosing, that they must and they have to reveal something to the whole world. They must give, they have a debt towards the world, and it's true according to the wisdom of Kabbalah, and therefore the whole world has a claim against us that we are causing harm to the whole world. And in truth, according to the wisdom of Kabbalah, they're right, because we can bring to the whole world the method of correction between everyone, and by that bring humanity to a degree in which people will not just see this world, they will see everything beyond the corporeal life. Because we, the way we live now, we are altogether animals. We live relative to our corporeal body, just to sustain it, only. But other than the maintenance of our body, we have other additional qualities that we continue to exist with beyond our bodily life. After we die in our body, and this is in each and every person who therefore has a complaint to the people of Israel that the Jews are hiding the secret. And that's the state we're in today. Today, the wisdom of Kabbalah has been revealed to everyone. We are spreading it amongst everyone. And we are today under states that if we don't bring humanity closer in connection, then humanity will suffer greatly and great problems will come to the whole world. And already today we're seeing this, all the way to the extent of a world war. And we will be to blame for this.
So what are we seeing in the world today with social distancing, for example? Why is that how is that manifesting itself? Is that offering a solution? Because it seems like we're getting farther away from each other by doing something like this, rather than coming together.
What are we seeing in the world today?
We won't be hearing my question, so we need to, if possible, include the question within the answer. What are we seeing today in terms of social distancing, and how is that manifesting itself? Thank you.
So what is this social distancing that we're seeing today? And in general, what are these phenomena that we're experiencing in the human society? Humanity, from the moment in which people began to emerge from the animal level to being humans, the difference between an animal and a human being is the ego that's inside this creature called a human, that wants to bend towards his own benefit everything that he sees. There is no other animal that wants to control everything, that wants everyone to serve it. There's no such thing. Each lives according to the extent of what it needs in order to sustain itself and continue and extend its generation. No more than that. Whereas people, as it's written, his hands are in everything and the hands of all are in him. He wants to rule the whole world and all of reality. Therefore, that's our attitudes towards nature, towards people, towards everything. What's happening now, in the last century, especially in our times, is that exponentially we are beginning to feel our ego growing from day to day. And we want to rule over everything and everyone. And therefore, we need the wisdom of Kabbalah so greatly that can show us how to balance the relations between us. Because on one hand, we want to distance from everyone, and on the other hand, to rule over everyone. And that's each and every one of us. And therefore, what's happening to us here is that we must arrange these matters. That's why the wisdom of Kabbalah is being revealed specifically, especially in our times, and we have an obligation to reveal it and disclose it to everyone, both to Jews and to the nations of the world, so that we will know how we connect between us in the right way. As in the wisdom of Kabbalah, there is the ability to draw the positive forces of nature. Because in our nature right now, what we're discovering for the time being is just the negative forces between us, where each repels or rejects the other or uses the other for his own benefit in order to exploit him. And the wisdom of Kabbalah says there is in nature a positive force. You can invite it and use it too, other than that negative force. And then by those two forces, when you approximate them, you can truly carry out the right work. Otherwise, you're constantly going kind of on one line and not in balance between two lines. This is why the wisdom of Kabbalah is being revealed specifically in our times, in order to help us take out of nature the positive force. But this positive force, we need to bring out on our own. We can't wait for it to be revealed on its own. There is no such thing. Only when we want to be connected, want to be closer to one another, to understand that we're dependent on one another, to work a little bit more with our minds and our hearts in a more integral manner, then in such a way we can come to a state in which we will discover this positive force, the force of connection, at which point we will be able to build the relations between us, the new relations between us, which are not to the detriment of people, but to the benefit of people.
So basically you're saying that humanity, by socially distancing ourselves and bringing all this darkness, we're going to need to find deeper connections with each other. So in a way, the isolation, would you say the isolation is bringing people closer? And how does that connect to Kabbalah and to the ideas of interconnectedness?
The wisdom of Kabbalah is like physics, which explains to us how the world functions and how we can use the forces of nature. It's not something that comes to us from the heavens. It's here, only in a way that we need to deepen a little in those forces that are operating and activating it. Hence, there is nothing above reality here. What is happening and coming to us now, let's say with this coronavirus, you probably want to ask about this, it comes as a response of nature, as because we can't be balanced, and we want to come closer to one another only in order to exploit each other even more in a worse, harsher way. Therefore, the force that's called the coronavirus comes and says, you need to distance. You need to get distant from one another. You're evoking such forces in nature that are destructive. If you continue in this manner, then this whole of humanity will end. Therefore, this force is as one that separates between us and gives us a time, a pause, a place where we will be able to think, how can we arrange human society and the relations between us in a more correct manner for this total, whole, integral nature? Because we want to destroy everything and not to be friendly to one another.
We've heard a lot about, here in Israel especially, everybody's trying to develop a vaccine for this. Is there a spiritual vaccine? And if so, what would that be, would you say?
Is there any spiritual inoculation for the coronavirus? The answer is yes. And it is certain that that's the only thing that will work, because I am fearful that this coronavirus, in place of it, many other modifications of it, mutations of different kinds will come, and we won't be able to come out of that. If not this, other blows will come. And in a higher frequency, we're already in it already, so we can't run away from this. And the solution is simple: to find the method of correction, of connection between us that shows us from the wisdom of Kabbalah how to connect and come closer to one another in the right way, and according to how we replace our relations, our egoistic, destructive relations, to friendly ones between us, then this coronavirus will disappear. It will disappear. That's why we don't have much to do here. What we see also is that this virus works in a very selective manner. It distances between us. It destroys the relations of our trade, management, all those things that have to do with banks and companies and organizations that it's explaining to us seemingly in its language that all that we have built, we built in the wrong way, egotistically, and we're using each other in this way. I understand that it's hard to see this, but according to the integrality of nature, the mutuality that nature wants to happen also on the degree of the speaking, on the degree of still, vegetative, and animal, there's a connection that's natural. Only the degree of the speaking, there's this constant war, and nature is demanding of us to use our mind and our feelings and our understandings and build the correct connection. And the virus is making us do that, is telling us to do so.
What I find is so incredible, and I heard you speak about this already, is how there's no, you mentioned as well, it's a purely democratic system going on here. People who are rich get it, people who are poor get it, people who are black get it, people who are white get it. It's sort of broken down our society that the individual is now responsible for the collective. I mean, anybody can go and spread this, anybody, so there's sort of this social responsibility happening. Can you touch on that a little bit as well? What your thoughts are?
Yeah, so is there a difference between, black, white, or yellow, or nationality or other kinds of differences, or even those who live uptown and downtown and so on. No, the human system, the human network, talking about it from the perspective of nature, it's just like different children of a single mother. There's no difference. And Mother Nature loves them all, just like any mother loves all her children. Now, we don't see it through our egoistic eyes, that's true, because that's part of the correction process that we have to make. And our correction here is that, indeed, we have to replace the method of human connection that we had so far into a new kind of integrated connection. And also, the people of Israel has to set an example for it, have to do this. And that's also why there is a latent complaint towards that group. Why don't they show their secrets? Why are they somehow guilty for everything that's happening in the world? People feel this unexplainable feeling within, this deep-seated demand. It exists in people, and also in each and every Jew, there is some sense of debt to the world, that he owes something, that he has to bring something to the world, that the world demands something from him, and there is something just in that demand. This is something that will have to become revealed. We're going to have to open it up. The method of correction will have to become revealed, which is actually the method of connection between all human beings. And otherwise, we're going to be facing many prolonged blows from nature that will eventually lead us to the right form of connection.
Would you say then that this virus, as horrible as it is and tragic, great personal losses going around the world, on the spiritual side, though, is it in fact offering a remedy, a medicine to the world spiritually?
Is this virus, as tragic as it is, does it actually present us a cure? First of all, I don't think it's tragic. If you do the math and think about how many people, now that we're under quarantine, people in their houses, people not working, people not driving cars, if you think about how much we use our life, it's much more than people who die from the virus. I mean, air pollution, car accidents, and so on, crime rates, etc. All of that is probably amounts to more than what you see happening as a result of the virus, even several times more. You might even say that we've gained human life thanks to this virus. What this virus brings to us is healing and longevity, in fact, instead of death. But we have to see this picture. For that, we have to see things in the right way. And perhaps statistics will also show you that within maybe a few weeks of its existence here, and which stopped our human activity, water is becoming cleaner, air is becoming cleaner, people get less sick with other diseases, and so on. So, is it really a blow and a plague, or is it a remedy? It's a remedy. It cleans the relationships between human beings so that we can live better. That's one thing. Secondly, why should we be, crying about getting back to our old life, our old routine? Why? What for? 80% of what human beings were doing was redundant. It's just unnecessary for human life. So why do we need to get back to that old model? Let's say that let's go back to a kind of life where we all live 4 hours, where we all work 4 hours a day. Everyone, and even less. And maybe you don't even need all people to do that kind of work. People can spend more time with their families, with their children, and then you don't have to put your kids in some other places and other frameworks. Let's use our life. It's like we were chasing our tail again more and more until we get some benefit at the end of this life. We don't. We die and that's it. So let's use our life more effectively and have a better sense of nature, of this world, and in fact the eternity that exists in nature. While we're living in this life, right here, we can develop a sensation of the eternity of nature. This is what Kabbalah calls, you shall see your life, you shall see the world in your life. This is what the wisdom of Kabbalah can develop within a person. This is what we're all capable of discovering as human beings. So why live like animals in the way we were currently living and just fight each other, etc.? Let's open it up and stop living in such a short-sighted, narrow manner. I definitely hope that we're going to see that this virus is a cure, and that's what's written about it in the Wisdom of Kabbalah, by the way, that it's not poison, it's medicine.
Can you talk very briefly about the Jewish concept of the Messiah, the Mashiach, the end of days, and is that connected to what's going on here?
So what about the Messiah and the end of days and these concepts? Yes, we exist in a time that you can refer to as the end of days. It's written about it in the authentic sources of Kabbalah, that our point in time can be called the days of Messiah, or the last generation, or the generation of Messiah. Yeah. And so we have to relate differently to our role, our time. We have to extract the positive forces from nature that will develop us towards a better connection. We have to develop an integrated connection. Just like all the still vegetative and animate levels of nature, we have to do this consciously on the human level. And then we will consciously experience the general force of nature, the integrated force of nature. Now, you can call that force God, you can call it Havaya, you can call it the upper force, you can call it the driving force of nature, or the force of the unifying force of nature. It's all one and the same. That's what we need to attain as human beings. And this is what's called the force of Messiah. Mashiach comes from the word limshoch, to pull. It pulls us, a force that pulls us out of our ego into human unity and connection. When we obtain that force of nature that pulls us out of our egoistic form of existence into a connected form of existence, then we discover the whole of reality, and both this world and what's called the next world, the spiritual world, becomes a single reality, and that time is called the time of Messiah. And I'm seeing that we are in these times right now. I didn't believe that it will take place, let's say, 45 years ago, when I started studying, engaging with the wisdom of Kabbalah. I couldn't believe it, even though my teacher told it to me and he said it to me. But now I'm seeing that it's literally happening.
Wow. What should our governments be doing these days then to help us through these times? What's their role?
Governments should realize that they have a role here. First of all, we must change our thinking. They have to change our thinking. They have to recognize that the future of the world is inevitably integration across all human beings. And they need to gradually move towards that. After all, they have to try to form and to establish an educational systems for both adults and system. We need an educational system that will help us see that we, human beings, we are the destructive force in the system of nature. And therefore, we have to come to a point where we become the connecting force of all parts of nature. Because we are the most developed creature, the most conscious creature, but all that development is currently aimed at destruction, at negative effects on the system. And therefore, we have to change our governments and how they work towards the people. And governments should be shown from the bottom, from the people. They have to recognize that they have to change their ways.
It seems like here in Israel especially, there's not a lot of connections, or there's more distancing than connections happening within our government here, especially where they're not quite getting the message as much as the people are. Because I've heard a lot of stories. Even my kids mentioned that they're on WhatsApp groups or Instagram groups with friends, and they're making new friends. Now they have a whole, what started with two friends on Instagram are now, 20, 30, 40 kids communicating every day, having WhatsApp, calls and messages and what have you. So they're making new friends and making new connections, even though they're isolated in their home. So perhaps the government can learn from that as well. I'd like to just ask a kind of a technical question about and I don't know if this is connected, so if not, you can tell me. In Kabbalah, there's this concept of the sfirot, and the top sfira, or one of the sfirot, is the keter, which is crown, which is corona. Is that something that people are talking about? Because to me, it was incredible. And are there other things in numerics or gematria or other hints of what's happening in the world right now?
Yes. It's not by chance that certain names are given. They looked at the form of the virus, and because its biological shape looks like a crown, they called it that way. I would say that it does a job that is suitable to a king that wears a crown, a king that reorganizes the world. It's that kind of force of nature that is working right now. I hope that we'll see many results from its rule over us right now. Today we have technology that enables us to connect between us. And today, these days, for instance, from where I am right now, I'm giving live broadcasts to hundreds of thousands of people altogether in dozens of languages. We have quite a developed system that enables that. What I'm trying to say is, it's not a problem today to share information across the world, and we have to do this because the better future of the world depends on this.
Rabbi, I heard you speak a little bit about the stages of, in Kabbalah, there are these different stages as well of healing. For example, isolation, which is something that we're going through right now. What are the stages, and how does that connect to this remedy that you spoke about?
What are the stages of overcoming this situation of quarantine, and isolation? I think that it's for our own good, and we need to overcome that isolation with connection. First, using the virtual form of connection over distance. And to the extent that we can bear each other and gradually get closer to each other emotionally, spiritually, then we will gradually also come out of our rooms and begin to be actually connected. So this condition now that we have to be separated is actually for our own good. It's in order for us to start advancing in a more specific way. The more we can be better towards others, the more connected we can be. Meaning not to exploit each other, but in order to be better connected to each other. That's what we need to teach everyone to do, and then we can build a new humanity. And then we're going to see how a beautiful, eternal world will open up before us that is really worthwhile living.
Beautiful. I'd like to just have one request. I'd like to arrange an interview now, Asaf, if that's okay. To interview you in 1 year from now, just before Pesach, in 1 year from now. Where do you think we will be there? Or where do you hope we'll be, exactly?
It's a deal. I'm willing. I'll be happy to do another interview in a year from now. What will happen? There's two options at all times. It's either the world does not listen to what the wisdom of Kabbalah is trying to say, meaning that we have to approach human connection, and otherwise we're leading the world into destruction, or changes will start happening. But in truth, if I look at things through the perspective of Kabbalah, yes, we are moving forward towards changes, positive changes. But if I don't look at it through the lens of Kabbalah, you see that the world is incapable of making the necessary changes. So we have to try. We have to try, because otherwise things can be very bad and very much detrimental for Israel, for the people of Israel. I am foreseeing very tough times if we don't manage to bring the correct method of human connection to all of humanity. Hopefully, we can do it. We will do it. Thank you.
Thank you. One last question I would just like to ask. You had mentioned, and we spoke earlier about how the virus is purely democratic. It goes across the world. It goes across ethnic, economic, whatever. Heads of state can get this. Guys on Wall Street.
I don't look at it. I wouldn't call it democracy. I don't know why to call it democracy. Democracy is what? The rule of the people. So it's not really the rule of the people. What I'm saying is actually it's the other way around. Humanity was never as destructive and lowly as it is today. So I don't know about the connection between what's happening today and true democracy. So many people are in such a lowly state. I don't have words to describe it. It's better not to talk about it. But also all the political parties that call themselves democratic parties, I don't see any real democracy. What everything is allowed is what we call democracy. Democracy means that it has to work for the benefit of the people. And first of all, that requires educating everyone towards that. The human being is born innately with a negative inclination. So we have to be educated about what is really to our benefit of all of us. And then according to that education, then human beings can work positively towards each other in their life. Take any democratic party. Who's there? typically you'll find a lot of people that come from all kinds of fringes of society, and that's not the true democracy.
Understood. What I wanted to get at more, though, was this is crossing all lines of there's no borders for this, except there's one which isn't pure, which is the US. They're carrying the virus, it seems, but they're not feeling as much the ill effects. Most of the people who are getting very sick from this are older or elderly, and perhaps there's a message in that as well, of the world that we're leaving for our children.
Yeah, it's not their fault that they carry the virus, and that's why they don't need to be sick. They didn't build the life that we're in right now, so why should they be harmed? It's actually the older people who took part in the destructive way of life that we have today. And that's why they need to feel the blow more intensively, and that's why the virus harms them.
Rabbi, thank you very, very much for your time. I wish you good health, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again in 1 year from now in better times. And let's hope everything that you've said we listen to as a world and as a society and humanity. Thank you.
Yes, let's hope for better times.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Be healthy.
Thank you as well.